Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Spiritual Unity Radio Network, a station dedicated to the concept that all manifestations of the divine are equally valid. Join Reverend Terry Power HP, Robin McKean, and all the hosts for programming covering a wide range of spiritual topics, right here on Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to an emerging forest, a safe place where we have the freedom to think about life without judgment. We take a look at society, we examine it, and we allow for the possibility of something new, something different. And now, here's your host, Alan Ritter.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of An Emerging Forest, and this one happens to be taking place on November the 17th, 2019. If you are out there and you are listening live, you are very welcome to join us on this podcast. I call it the radio because it is live. It's a different kind of radio. And the number to call is 646-564-9714. And I'd like to bring my friends on. One of them is a relatively medium length friend, and that's Dave Miller. And one of them is a new friend of mine, Cheryl Glover. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
So, Cheryl, you have some things to talk about tonight, and I usually try to get new guests on the show to first. You have some things that some events that you're going to present. So what we would like to give the audience is an idea of, in a very short time span, sort of what you're going to talk about and what the events are that you want to talk about, and some contact information for those events, so that if someone only listens to the first 3 or 4 minutes of the show, they can get an idea of what the show is going to be about and whether it's something for them.
Sounds great. On November 22nd, which is this coming Friday, I'll be giving a workshop on a deep emotional release. This workshop basically goes into your energy, and it goes on the premise that this energy is stuck. So, for example, I've gone through a trauma, and a lot of other people have gone through traumas. And when you go through a trauma, the energy gets stuck, and not only do you need to release that energy of it, you also need to get through the emotion of it. And the emotion is what keeps it stuck. So we have a method of using sound where we can release the energy in the chakras. We can go very deep into your psychology in a very short amount of time using using different sound therapies from one chakra to another, use the actual frequencies of those to break up energy and to move you forward to, come to a new place in your life. I surely did that, and it wasn't until I found this method that it moved me from a very deep psychological space to something that was opened up and free and open and actually changed my life. And this workshop is being held in Middletown, New Jersey. You can find that workshop on touchmotherearth.com/events and other workshops that come after that. But this workshop in particular on Friday night is a very deep process, and everybody is welcome. And we have other workshops after that. Go to touchmotherearth.com. You will find a list of the workshops there.
Okay, so that's touchmotherearth.com to find those events. And it's basically this coming Friday, and you said there's a sequence of more workshops after that.
Yes. Okay, this workshop is at 7 p.m., and we would really like you to RSVP. So if you go up on the workshop and click on the event, let us know you're coming. We appreciate that. And the number of workshops coming up in the future include some sound healing, some drumming events. We have, don't you think we should start with who I am, and maybe we get some background here. Okay, so I'm a Reiki Master,
right,
and I'm a channel. Yeah. And so we have workshops coming up in Reiki and some different. I just finished this weekend, for example, doing a Qigong workshop where we very deeply touched down into the plants that we were planting this weekend, chestnut trees. And we did a Qigong workshop where we could literally get into the energy of the plant and of nature and channel that energy through us so that we go into movement and help move ourselves forward and we come into communion with the earth. And other workshops that we have up, normally every quarter I do psychic self-defense workshop, and I do a Reiki workshop. And one of the workshops that I love to give is something I call the Emissary. And the Emissary came from a workshop of a channel that I did over 15, 20 years ago. And in that channel, I was given a new methodology of healing. And so the Emissary, I do that workshop about once every 6 months. And we pass this method of energy here. It's very similar to Reiki, but it's not because it's an interdimensional type of energy. And that workshop will be coming up probably in the spring. We don't have it exactly scheduled yet, but it will be coming up soon.
Mm-hmm. So, thank you for that overview. And in your mind, how did you get? I don't know if you came from a normal job setting, or how did you get to where you are now?
Well, it's very interesting. I was brought up in Judaism, and I studied Judaism, and I didn't really find anything that I was searching for in this specific religion. And I went to the University of Southern California, and I have a master's degree in philosophy of world religions. So I was searching all over for different religions, for different ideas to believe with, and to understand what is the nature of the universe. And in trying to understand the nature of the universe, two things happened. The first thing that happened is I was assaulted at school. As I said, I was studying for my master's degree. And as I was studying, I was basically kidnapped. I was assaulted, and I was taken in my own car and held at knife point. And during this whole incident, I was with the person. I believe I was an atheist. And somewhere in the middle of that process, something clicked with me. I started to feel a spiritual feeling. I started to look over at my rapist, and I started to see wings. I started to see a different idea of what the universe was about. And I decided to try to save my life, so I tried to fight this person and ended up stabbed. And I had a knife wound. Basically, it went for my heart, and I lost consciousness. So I wasn't aware of the rape. I wasn't aware of the stabbing. The next thing I knew is I woke up and there was a California Highway Patrolman who was opening the door and telling me to lay back down. He's got an ambulance coming. So when I got to the hospital, they put me, I was laying there. They were trying to do whatever they could do. They started to lose me. They lost my blood pressure, and they started to lose my life at that point in time. At that point, I had an experience where I went through what I later found out was the veil. And when I went through the veil, the prophet Elijah, which I later found out also, was there. And he said to me, you have two choices. And your two choices are to come with us, or you can go back. But if you go back, you can't be a victim. Everything has to change. Everything you know has to change. You can't go back and do what you've been doing. And at the time, I had a husband who was violent towards me. I was literally a beaten wife. And then here comes this rape experience. And I looked at him and I said, you know what, I'm going to go back because I want this life to change. And at this point, the Elijah put his hand on top of my head and gave me this energy that was nothing, it was an experience that was nothing like anything I'd ever experienced. And I was in this light and in this energy, and as it was equivalent to what I felt as he was downloading information into my head. And I believe truly that when I channel now, it comes from that download. And it came to the point where I could almost speak on anything. It didn't matter after that what the topic was. Spirit would speak to me and I would know what to say. Spirit would answer questions for me. It was almost as if, literally, it was before many computers. There were computers, but not many. But it was like a download, literally, into my body. And when I came out of that experience after I fought through the trauma, later on, about 5 years later, I would find my channel and I would find the divine presence and I would find my spirituality and I would find my power as a woman. The initial trauma wasn't easy. I carried around a 75-pound German Shepherd and a gun in my pocketbook, and I went and took karate lessons. I have a black belt in karate, and all of those started to empower me. And I got rid of the abusive husband and changed who I was and how I stand in the world, and went through a lot of different programs. I became kind of a workshop junkie. I took everything that was everything about self-improvement I could find, anything about how to access your own ego, your own consciousness, how to raise your consciousness. I took courses in metaphysics. I took courses in, Reiki and psychicness and everything. And the interesting thing is, it wasn't just the channel that popped up. I was a born psychic. Okay. As a child, I always was psychic. I always knew and what was going on, and I could always see things. I could see ghosts, and I could feel energy, and I'm a natural empath, so I could feel other people's emotions, which is what actually led me to be a victim, because I did not know how to protect myself from other people. And I also didn't know my emotions. As an adult, as a grown woman, after like 40 years, I could finally figure out there was a difference between my emotions and others. This is why I teach the class Psychic Self-Defense. I teach empaths and other psychics how to defend themselves from feeling energy. So after I went through the veil, I wasn't just my child psychic. My psychicness went, from maybe it was 50 to about 80. It jump-started me to where the universe looked different. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. There wasn't anybody that was going to make me a victim anymore. I was going to find the strength I need, whether I was going to find it in my divinity, in my divine self, in my consciousness, in my ability to control my body through karate, whether I was going to find it as a channel or, as just using my natural ability of strength. I was going to find it, and I did. And it took me a long number of years. And through that journey, I love helping others who have had that same experience. So I do get, as a Reiki Master, I do get a lot of students who have gone through this same type of trauma. And I help walk them through it. And that's why that workshop that is coming up is one of the workshops that I took for self-help. It came from the Pathwork Center, pathwork.org. And Pathwork was a 5-year journey where it was a psycho-spiritual experience where we walked through the psychology and the spirituality. And I do believe those mean it's not just mind, body, and spirit, but it is a matching of your soul with your psychology. And I just explored at that point in time. And then about 10 years later, the channels started to come where I would channel the Ascended Masters and the Archangels. And I started working with the angels, and I started working with a number of different masters. But Elijah, I found, was still my guide. And so in working with Elijah about 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Creating from the Soul. And the reason it's creating from the soul is if you look at the first part of my life, the first 30 years of my life, you will see that I created from my ego, I created from my victimhood, I created from my weakness, I created my life from what other people wanted me to be, and I became, their doormat, literally. And so the journey to creating from the soul came that I would talk to Elijah, and in the book I channel him, and I wrote down what he said. And so there's 2 pages where Elijah gives us his wisdom, and then I took his wisdom and I analyzed it. I repeated it in terms of psychology. What is he saying? What do we need to do to grow? What do we need to see? What do we need to do to manifest? Because I knew what manifesting from the ego is like. And manifesting from the ego got me a knife in my heart. It got me beaten. It got me pushed down. And I knew in my heart, that I was better than all that, but I had no way of climbing out. It wasn't until I hit bottom in that experience that I could start moving forward. And so when you create from your soul, you create beautiful relationships. You create not from your ego, but from what the universe needs. You create courses that other people need, not what you need. It's not about you, but it's about what does the universe need here. And that's kind of the trick. One trick, and I call it a trick, but that's not a very good word. But one step, let's say, is to change your consciousness. So in my earlier life, I had such low consciousness. I was so unaware that I couldn't use my psychic gifts, as an example. I could not do anything with them. I would just flood myself with knowledge. But as far as relationships, they failed. Every single one I had failed. From my relationship to my parents, to my relationship to friends I struggled with, to my relationship with my ex-husband. All of those failed. Not necessarily, well, for one reason I chose incorrectly. Of course, that's one reason for failing. But I chose from the ego instead of choosing from that higher self. So in Pathwork, we learn about that higher consciousness and how to move from your lower consciousness into higher consciousness. And when you create from a place of your higher consciousness, you create beauty in the world. You create a spiritual existence, one that honors the earth as well as honors the soul. You create from a place that is not so that you gain things, but you create from a place of, well, I gain by helping other people. There's a conduit there. There's a path there to that higher place. And when you create from the soul, it's not just, okay, what house am I going to build? Where am I going to live? What job do I want? But it's more about, what am I going to do with my life that gives back to the divine presence? What am I going to do in my life that makes a difference on this earth? What am I going to leave as my legacy? How am I going to help people that helps them see that what I went through isn't something that they necessarily have to go through, but if they did, that there's a way out there. They don't have to, live a life that is in regret. How do I live a life that shows people that you could always start again and again and again and again? You can keep starting, and it doesn't matter how much you've been knocked down. It doesn't matter how much you've been through. You can take those steps, and you can move that forward higher and higher and higher. So in my book, I describe how you gain consciousness, but also how you take steps up to gain consciousness, how you move through them, how you are aware of what you are doing. And I made it a kind of workbook. It's sometimes difficult for people to work through because when you're working through it, it's about, 50 years of psychoanalysis in a 100-page book. And that's because you have to look inward. All of it is about looking inward so that you look outward. Anybody
Cheryl,
have any questions?
How can people get a copy of your book?
They can get it on my personal website, which is New Thought Kabbalah, and that's hard, NEWTHOUGHT, Kabbalah, KABBALAH.com. Or they can buy it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. Or they can just message me on Facebook, and we could do it that way. But that's a good question, how you can get a copy of my book. But more importantly, also, it's a site. How did I get to Kabbalah? Because we started the question, Alan's question was, what was my upbringing? And I brought in the Judaism. But how did I get to Kabbalah is very interesting because, during that journey and before I wrote my book and after this trauma, I found a philosophy or a tradition. It's questionable what Kabbalah is. It's both a spiritual journey and a practice and a way of living. And when I found Kabbalah, and the correct pronunciation is Kabbalah, for those of you out there that kind of know, I found a method that brought together some of my childhood upbringing with how I really believe. And a lot of what I believe in is a tradition called New Thought. Okay, and there are a lot of New Thought churches out there. And so my website is New Thought Kabbalah because I brought together those two traditions and those two philosophies into one. And that's what catapulted me to my book, because my book is kind of a combination of New Thought philosophies, Kabbalah understanding, raising higher consciousness, and actually a lot from the Pathwork Center.
So in somebody getting your book, you mentioned it's a workbook, and I also see that it's a manual in obtaining a master's in consciousness. Could you describe that?
Yeah, I can. Basically, it's I believe, and Kabbalah believes, okay, and so does New Thought, that we're here on this earth to ascend. And I hate using that word because there's a lot of loaded stuff out there with it. But let's say instead of the word ascend, we use the word, we're here to raise our consciousness, climb a ladder. And I like to use the tree of life for that, okay, because the tree of life takes us from the conscious world, okay, where we are on the ground, which we call Malkut, okay, up to all the way up to Keter, where your higher spirituality would be, where God would exist. And so in the book, with the help of Elijah, of course, I describe that climb from where we come from to where we want to go. Now, people always ask me, am I going to ascend in this lifetime? And, I can't tell what you're going to do. I can't even tell what I'm going to do. But all I know is it's a path. The journey is the lifetime. We're living the journey. And that journey is one step at a time. And so we go from consciousness, we go from not understanding anything we were about. And that was me, okay? I just let people beat on me, and I let people, do whatever they wanted to me, literally. I did not stand up for myself, and I did not understand any of that. And then we go all the way higher up to what I call, the path of the mystic. And the path of the mystic is to walk straight up that tree of life and to become this spiritual, raised consciousness ascended being who could actually, do magic, and it's Merlin and everything else, and it's Jesus, and it's Elijah, and it's Moses, and it's any biblical, and it's all the biblical characters and all the ascended masters, and somewhere in between is our struggle in life. We struggle first to control our ego. So in my book, we talk about the ego and what do you have to do to tame that ego, and what do you have to do an exercise to move yourself through it. Okay, so now you're working with your ego. Well, what happens there? Well, then there's that inner child who is very hurt, and you go back to these traumas that almost everybody has of some sort. Why? Because life isn't perfect, okay? Parents aren't perfect, and I know as a parent I'm not perfect, and, we kind of, pass this on from one person to another. And so how do we get to that, and how do we heal from that? And there are certain exercises
Cheryl,
that
Cheryl,
I give.
I need to. Hi, Cheryl. I need to interrupt right now. Hey, folks. I need to take the break right now, so we'll come back to what you were just talking about after the break. And the song to lead into the break is Dave the Bard's Howlin' Toe. See y'all after the break.
Take no scorn to wear the horn. It was the crest when you were born. Your father's father wore it, and your father wore it too. Howlin' Toe, jolly rumble-o, we were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime. Welcome in the mail, for summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away. Robin Hood and Little John have both gone to the fair, and we shall to the merry greenwood to hunt the bark and hare. Oh, Howlin' Toe, jolly rumble-o, we were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime. Welcome in the May, for summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away. What happened to the Spaniard? The mates are brave, the boast, oh, that they shall eat the feather goose. We shall eat the roast, oh, Howlin' Toe, jolly rumble-o, we were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime. Welcome in the May, for summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away.
tune in to International Pagan Radio. You can hear your favorite artists such as Dave the Bard, Tuatha Dea, Spiral Rhythm, S.J. Tucker, Murphy's Midnight Rounders, and many, many more. Join us for exciting shows like Ask a Witch and Storytime with Rook as well. www.internationalpaganradio.com on the net or on TuneIn Radio on your mobile devices. Join us on Facebook and Twitter too. International Pagan Radio, all pagan, all the time.
Welcome back to An Emerging Forest on the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. We hope everyone was able to stretch their legs and get a drink. And now, back to Alan.
Welcome back, everyone, and my guests have joined me. Please continue, Cheryl.
Sure. So I think I was talking about my book and wanted to talk a little bit more about how I started channeling and how Elijah started to come to me. It was the strangest experience. I started going to some channeling groups and hearing different ascended masters starting to come in. But when Elijah came in, I realized who Elijah was, because remember in my early trauma, I had said that it was Elijah that was through the veil that I had recognized. And so in this one-on-one relationship with him, he started giving me information on raising consciousness, on understanding how we climb that tree of life. First being looking back at childhood traumas, taming our ego, starting to see how we communicate and how we think about things, how we take a step towards others or away from others, how our relationships are, how we relate to other people, and how we don't relate to other people. All of these on the steps to higher consciousness were aspects of that. When we start to look at it, the aspects of consciousness include our understanding. How well do we understand what others are going through? How do we feel their pain? And what do we do when we feel their pain? Do we just feel their pain, or do we reach out, help? And so the analysis and the journey was in understanding the kind of the piece parts of the ladder that we're going to climb and how to get there and where we are on that ladder and whether we're stuck. My theory is that if you're here on Earth, you're on the ladder somewhere. You haven't accomplished it. And we, and until you ascend, until you pass over on that, and you don't need to come back. But if you're here, you're because you need to be here. So I think we were talking about channeling also. It's a very interesting process when I started channeling, because first I just sat there with the energy, and the energy was similar to that of being on the other side of the veil. And at some point, after going to channeling groups for a number of years, the voices started to come through and started to speak. And I started to realize, or people were telling me, that the ascended masters would speak first. So I would channel Jesus, I would channel Elijah, I would channel Moses, I would channel Buddha. And I do a workshop called The Ascended Masters Speak, where for a 2-hour presentation, the Ascended Masters bless us and come in about 15-minute sessions and speak on whatever topic they wish to speak on. And then I started doing the Angels Speak, where the angels can come in and speak and share the platform, so to speak, and talk about current things. And it was through the channels and channeling Elijah, that I was given the motivation to write my book. It's kind of all coming together. It was the climb to consciousness. It was the information coming from the spirit world through the channels. It was my studies in the Pathwork Center. It was my studies in a number of different workshops. It was going to New Thought churches, and it was studying Kabbalah and really delving into the world of Kabbalistic knowledge and Kabbalistic mysticism. It was really funny because, well, it's the why. It's not a religion. It's not about religion. It's the why do we do certain things in certain religions. And it was really all about the mysticism behind it and that connection of our soul. And there was one truth in all of it that I just kept coming to no matter what I did, and that was we are all one, we are all connected, all religions are correct, everybody's got a piece of the truth, and that's all we need to do is raise our consciousness enough to see which truth is speaking to us and to embrace that truth and to embrace the universal concept of love. But when you embrace that universal concept of love, that's all it's about. That's what ascension is about. It's the ability to have unlimited, unconditional, and unbridled love.
Can you give us some idea of how they can contact you?
Sure. You can contact me at New Thought Kabbalah at gmail.com, which is my direct line. As co-producer of Touch Mother Earth, you can find my workshops at touchmotherearth.com. And I prefer, we talked about my trauma, and what you all don't know is it left me deaf. For the most part, I have no hearing in my right ear because I had a concussion. My head was pummeled during that. So I lost my hearing in my right ear, and I lost half my hearing in my left ear, which now I only have 25% hearing. So I prefer that people do not call me. I'm on a microphone, and I'm on a special hearing aid that allows me to hear through my cell phone, but it is limited, so I prefer people email me. And I'm really good at email. I can come back really quick. But either of my websites, either newthoughtkabbalah.com has my email on it, or just newthoughtkabbalah@gmail.com. I know that's hard to remember, but touchmotherearth.com is easy, and you can get me at Cheryl at touchmotherearth.com, and that's CHERYL. But I would like to talk about my readings, because it's one thing to have my workshops, which are channeled, and each one changes. So if you went to one of my workshops, and it will, the next workshop, even if it's the same topic, would be different, because I don't teach. None of this is me. Has nothing to do with me. It has to do that I'm channeling spirit, and it is spirit that speaks. And in my readings of where I sit down with somebody for 45 minutes, I do a channeled reading where I channel your spirit guides. I channel your past lives. I channel your angels who are going to speak to you and help you. And some of it is about past life that you need to know about in order to help your current life, like be stuck in a rut, as I was, for example. I was stuck in that. That's why that trauma happened to me. And these channel readings, though, they're very one-on-one. That's all I do is hold your hands. I don't use cards. I don't need tools. It's just you and me and spirit. And we spend that 45 minutes talking to your guides, your angels, the ascended masters sometimes. And again, sometimes they bring me to past lives. Sometimes it's what you don't think you need, but you do need. So I can't even describe it sometimes because it's something that has to be experienced and something that it's different every time, and it's different for every single person.
Is that done at your location, or do you also travel?
Mostly it's done in my location, but I'll do a psychic party, for example, and I'll do them in 15 minutes, that type of thing. But if it's local New Jersey or in Florida in the winter, in the months of February, March, or April, then they're at either location, but somewhere in those states.
Can you give some other idea of what other type of workshops you have done?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a Reiki Master, and I studied with Diane Stein, who wrote All Women Are Healers and Essential Reiki. And so I do give Reiki classes. I talked a little about Emissary. Emissary, again, is a very odd type of healing, but stronger than Reiki. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it is for those healers or those people who want to be healers or those who are drawn to it, who are drawn to a more esoteric type of healing because it's multidimensional. So it impacts you on, like we were talking about, your higher consciousness level, your spirit, your soul, in your body, and it lifts you up into a way different dimension, almost what most people call out of this earth realm type of thing. I've done I teach Qigong, which I studied, and I teach it in terms of how we connect to the earth, how we connect to Mother Earth, how we connect to the trees and to the rocks, and we can harness energy from the earth and give back to the earth, and we move in a circular motion as we give to the earth and we grab from the earth, and it creates a energy circuit that allows us untold amount of energy to get moving and to do the things that we need to do. I teach psychic self-defense. I have taught psychic surgery, which is mostly a meditative type of thing. We're not actually doing surgery into people, but I'm helping people who to move energy through their bodies and to move light through their bodies in order to create healing. And it specifically goes into very deep organs and things, so I call it psychic surgery because I help you get the energy, for example, like into that kidney, into the heart of where you might need it. I've done a whole bunch of different channeling classes. Like I said, Ascended Masters speak, the Archangels speak. I do a specialized Saint Germain class. I do a essential channeling class. I teach a channel class. I teach a psychic development class. Let's see. Trying to think of what I haven't taught. I teach a Kabbalah class. I teach a number of different Kabbalah classes. I have taught a year-long class in Kabbalah to a select number of students where I took about 12 students through the Tree of Life to raise their consciousness. In fact, was at the culmination of that class that I wrote my book, because we literally walked through the tree of life. And I teach the essential Kabbalah, but I also teach a esoteric Kabbalah where we use music and divine sound to move us to the higher realm of Kabbalistic spirituality. So there's a number of different Kabbalah classes taught in there. And that's essentially
Melody, that's quite a list. You've mentioned a couple terms that people may not be familiar with. One is the Ascended Masters and also is Emissary. Can you expand on those?
Okay, I really can't expand on the Emissary but I can tell you how it came about. Okay, we're down in South Jersey or Middle Jersey and stuff, and in Red Bank there's a store called Earth Spirit, and Joycelyn, my dose, is one of my mentors that helped me channel, and we were at a channeling group, and she started channeling, and I started channeling, finishing her channeling. We both channeled the same entity, and we both she started channeling, I finished the channel. And we named this entity the Emissary, and one of the students actually named it. And it's a multidimensional being, meaning it's a spiritually ascended master. Well, and I know I have to explain that is not from this planetary system, but is from another planetary system. And that doesn't make them, from Mars or anything. It's just that they are spiritually ascended in a different system than we are. So it's kind of hard to explain what that is because we don't 100% know it. That's all I know is that the healing is incredible. And the channel for the emissary was the emissary came in because they recognized we needed a different level of healing. In fact, they said our planet was toxic and what we eat was toxic, and there was so much toxicity that we needed a different spiritual level of healing, and so they came over into our system to help us get rid of that toxicity. Okay, so let me go back and talk about what are Ascended Masters and what is it we're actually talking about. And so I mentioned Elijah, and I mentioned some biblical figures, okay? So one definition that people would put on an Ascended Master would be somebody of biblical proportion, okay, who has lived through this earth and mastered the level of higher consciousness up the tree of life. So, we have some good examples that have that religions have been built around these people. Probably the most famous being Christianity. So they built a religion around Jesus the Christ, okay, who in my book would be an ascended master, somebody who mastered their time on earth and then raised themselves in consciousness and then helps people in the spiritual world raise their consciousness. Another one would be the prophet Elijah that I work personally with. Another would be, as an example, Moses. Another would be the Buddha. Another would be Saint Germain. And there's a whole list that goes on and on and on and on. And do we know exactly who is ascended and who isn't? No. We know a number of channels that channel these beings, and they speak of being ascended. And that's all that really means is that they're communicating with us. They have access to the spiritual realm. They have access to, unlimited wisdom and to the history of the ages, and they can help us. And they're extremely helpful because they felt pain. They know what it is to raise a child, to birth a child. They understand what it is to break a leg. They understand what it is to die. They understand what a broken heart is. They understand what loneliness is. They understand what disease is. So they have lived the human tragedy, the human pain, being human, and yet they're up in spirit. So they're the ultimate coach. The ultimate coach, because they've been there, they understand it, they understand human emotion, they understand anger. We don't even understand anger. But they understand anger because they've lived through it and now ascended. They're looking back, to assist. They're the ultimate coach. And so we rely a lot on those ascended masters to give us information. And that's why the download in my head from the trauma that I experienced, the near-death experience that I experienced is, just huge amount of information. And it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. At the same time, for example, when you speak to an angel has not lived on the earth. They don't understand the human experience. They don't know what pain is. They don't know what we've experienced. So when the angels speak, it's from their realm and how the world looks for them, and them looking down to assist us, for example, in doing miracles would be as an example of that, or understanding miracles, or how we can do miracles, which is a famous channel that the archangels love to speak through me on, and how we create our own miracles, but they understand a portion of the cosmos or a portion of the metaphysical phenomenon that we don't understand because they live in a different realm, like we talked about, the emissary being multidimensional. The angels are in a different dimension than we are. But the ascended masters have lived in both dimensions, both the earth dimension and both that upper dimension. And so who else would you want to coach you but them?
Alan, do we have anybody online who wanted to speak with Cheryl?
We have a listener who does not want to be online.
Okay. So touchmotherearth.com will list how they can find you on upcoming events. And should also mention in 2020 that Touch Mother Earth will be producing a festival, which you will be co-producing. And what is the festival about? What is the goal of the festival? What kind of workshops or what happens at that?
Well, this year we're trying to focus more of our connection both to the planet and to our spirit. So we kind of cover, it's a cliche, mind, body, spirit. And so I hate to say that. But we literally want to look down into the energy of our planet. We want to look how we're protecting, how we are the governors of the earth. We're the inheritors of the earth. And we touch that Mother Earth literally to save her, to love her, to embrace it. And we want to do workshops on how we can embrace that concept and be part of that. But at the same time, we are spiritual beings living in the earth, and we want to embrace our spirituality, and we want to know that we're raising our consciousness, and raising our consciousness to know what the planet needs, and raising our consciousness so that we understand that we are all one. The biggest issue I see of there being a separation is that people think They're separate from each other. It's their egos. And so this year we want to bring a festival together where we touch Mother Earth, we touch our souls, and we bring those both together. And we're talking about different cultures. You know, how do we bring in together the Native American culture and that spirituality, you know, the Chinese culture and understanding what is, you know, the what happened there, the African shamanism, and understanding how we are one and how everybody touches the planet and touches our soul and touches our spirit and brings all that together. And we want to look at all cultures and bring that together as one so that we understand we are one. We are one planet, we are one peoples, and we together as one can make a difference in this world.
As a friend says, we all bleed red blood.
Yeah.
So you have a workshop coming up this Friday, Deep Emotional Energy Healing. Can you give us a description of the workshop again and what people could expect?
Sure. Okay, this workshop, it comes from the fact that after years of working on my psychology and the spirituality and everything else, I still had energy stuck in me from a trauma that was 20 years old. And how do we get that energy out of our system, and how do we heal? And no matter how much therapy you're going to go through, you're not going to get the energy out. So we have to move the energy at a different level. So what this workshop does is it uses sound and it uses meditation, where I will do the sound and I will do the meditation, and Dave Miller will actually provide the sound. And we will go through each chakra. So, for example, if we're doing the lower chakra and we're doing the drum to that, and the lower chakra is about safety. It's how safe we are, how we're connected to the planet, how our environment, it's the red chakra, and it's about, you know, are we safe in this world? It's the one that I wasn't safe in, as an example. And so by using the drum and certain movements and certain meditations, we're going to unstick that energy in that chakra, and we're going to go from one chakra to the other, all 7. And I do want to mention I do 12 chakras, and it is one of the classes I do is the 12th chakra that takes us all the way up. But in this class, we're going to stay with the 7 chakras because we want to release the energy from it. And we're going to use music and certain sounds, okay, to dissipate and get at the energy that's been stuck in everybody. And everybody has it, just in a different percentage. And that workshop is on the 22nd, starts at 7 p.m. It's in Middletown, New Jersey, and you can find it on touchmotherearth.com.
Is there anything in particular people should bring with them? Either a notebook or journal, something like that? Or
yes, bring a notebook or journal and dress comfortably. And if while I'm saying this will include movement, it doesn't really include anything more than walking around a room. So if you have trouble with mobility and you don't want to walk a lot, you can also sit and move your feet and your hands, and we can work with that. So don't think it's like exercise. It's not. It's less exercise than my Qigong class. So you should be fine. But yes, please do that. And we do a community tea afterwards, so if people want to bring things, we have a lot of fun after. So plan on staying for an hour after and talk, meet, connect, commune, ask questions.
Sounds like it allows for some processing as well.
Yeah.
Ellen, do you have any other questions?
No, I
got
don't.
her started the first half hour. Very good. Well, I would like to thank you. Cheryl, is there anything else you want to bring out the audience would want to know about?
I have a big Facebook presence, and so you can get us on Facebook at touchmotherearth.com or Touch Mother Earth, and also at New Thought Kabbalah has their own Facebook page also. So you can, that's a great, Facebook messaging is really good for me for somebody who's hard of hearing. So feel free to message me on Facebook.
Beautiful. You've definitely covered a lot. You're a great person to have and interview. You know your subjects and you're very confident. So I want to thank you for taking your time to appear on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you, Alan. Have a good night, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thank
Good night.
you so much for listening to the show. Have a great evening. My name is Alan Ritter, and I can be contacted at ritter@ALAN88@gmail.com. You can be on the show telling your story in a future episode. Just drop me an email. And as always, I encourage you to engage your passions. And even if it's 5 minutes a week, that turns into hours of engagement and changes your life. So please do, what your heart wants to do, even if it's a very short period of time, and the doors will open. Have a great night. Have a great week. Please, if you can, go to the workshop this coming Friday. If it calls to you, please get in touch with Touch Mother Earth and make arrangements to be at the workshop. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for listening.